So I want you to realize you haven't failed. How do you know that you failed if you don't know where you are in the process? Which we never know where we are in the process exactly. If you know, for example, I have a playlist of Amy's videos, right? One of them indicates, oh, there's a kitty. Sorry for the wiggling. There's a video about, when you expect that it will happen, that's usually step 2 when you really believe that it could happen. But it doesn't mean that it will happen at that point. That is actually just step 2. Usually when you expect that it will happen, you have a lot of resistance or attachment. And yes, you can get what you want with attachment, and you can get what you want with resistance, of course. But there is, when you do it right, when you focus properly on the end result, step 2, 3, and 4 will always come naturally, and you naturally will detach over time, and you actually naturally will come up with all the resistance over time. So everything comes up naturally when you do step 1 correctly. Step 1 is feel it real, get into the end result, right? Live the end result, the focus work. And then everything else will fall in line, clear out really easily and quickly, actually. So if you haven't gotten result, it's probably because you have enough attachment to... Attachment is really stressful in the mind. So attachment is like you chasing after it all the time. Like you need it, right? You don't need it. You don't need any of it. You want it. You prefer it. I'm using Amy's words. But you don't need it. And then resistance is about limiting thoughts or opposing thoughts or fears that are turning into stories, right? That's all they are. All we're doing with those steps 3 and 4 is soothing our mind and calming it down and taking the stress off to let it come in. That is you letting it come in. Step 3 and 4 is about you letting it come in. You're relaxing enough to let it come in. That's it. Because you can have what you want with resistance and with attachment, because technically, do we ever really completely detach from something? I don't think so. As long as we still want it a little bit, there's probably some attachment. That's okay, because why not? We don't have to get rid of all of it completely, right? Just enough to kind of let it in and kind of relax the mind to let it come in. That's the thing, relax it. So who are you to determine that you have failed because it hasn't shown up in the 3D? So what? Do you determine the timeline? No, you don't. So you haven't failed. You are the one who determines when to give up or to keep going. You choose to keep going or to give up, and either one is okay. I have let go of my old SP, and I was completely fine with it, and I manifested someone even better. Someone who was exactly like him in all the good ways, but even better. So I'm like, I'm not complaining. And the universe at that point knew what I wanted in a man, so he gave me everything the old guy was in the positive ways, except without all the negative things, and he was even better. He was nicer and sweeter and more affectionate. I'm like, I did that. I manifested that. I didn't create it. It was already created. But I manifested into the 3D. So we don't determine the timeline. You haven't failed yet. Just because it hasn't shown up, you have to realize that the outside world is always only a reflection of the inside world. It never is to look at the validation that you already have it, because you already have it on the inside. If you can see it in your mind, if you can feel it in your mind or in your body or whatever, you already have it on the inside, right? But it hasn't pushed out yet, maybe. And that's okay, because you don't determine when it pushes out. Higher self, the universe does that, God, whatever you want to call it, right? But you have to realize that you also don't determine the timeline. All you're doing is concentrating on the what, and what comes up with the what is resistance and attachment, and you work through those, and eventually it will show up. If you're manifesting as NSP for 2 years, then obviously something is stuck, right? And you probably are feeling stuck, because I know, because I was manifesting my SP a second time around for 2 years and nothing happened. I got no movement whatsoever other than he blocked and unblocked me all the time. That's some movement. It's great, but nothing actually happened. So I'm like, fuck this. I don't want to deal with it. And all his crappy stories that I would have had to change anyway. So I moved on. I didn't want to have to change all the stories about his mom and him and whatever, right? But I chose to move on, and I was happy with the decision. I was ready to let it go. And I'm not talking about letting go as in detaching, letting it go completely. But you want to realize you don't control the timeline. And if you don't see it in your 3D, then it wasn't time yet. Call it divine timing, whatever you want to call it, orchestration, I don't care. But again, In general, it doesn't take super fucking long. It doesn't take 1 or 2 years to manifest someone. If it takes you that long, then it's just because you're stuck on something that you haven't resolved yet. Book a session with me. I can help you. I can't help you guys on these videos with this stuff. You can ask me all these questions. Most of the time I will tell you to book a session because there's no secret answer. There's not one thing that fixes everything. It depends on the person, and we would have to go through all the 4 steps and see what's going on, and maybe most likely I can catch some stories right away that I can catch them and, hey, stop saying this, stop perpetuating this, right? It's really easy for an outside person to see what's going on your end. And that's why often I bounce things off of a friend too, to see, okay, what am I reflecting back, right? Because sometimes we can't see what's going on in us. And that's okay, that's totally normal. It's just part of it, you know? And you don't determine the timeline. You have nothing to do with it. That's part of it. High expectations, drop them. And realize that if it hasn't pushed out yet, there's probably a reason why. Either because it's orchestration, or because there's enough resistance or attachment or both to stress you out and kind of keep you stuck and circling around. And that's it. But if you don't give up, you will get results. I have heard from some other, from clients of mine that there are coaches out there that say, hey, do this for 2 weeks, and if it doesn't work, you're doing it wrong. I'm like, you're only doing it wrong if you feel bad. My definition of wrong is really, do you feel like shit? Well, then you're going the wrong direction. It doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. You're just figuring out what isn't right, right? And often we have to figure out what's wrong to figure out what's right. We have to go sometimes in the wrong direction to figure out, hey, that's the wrong direction. And then we can go the other direction because that one feels better. That's the only time when I say wrong and right. So when I respond to you guys in wrong or right, that's what I mean. It doesn't mean that there's a wrong way to do it. It just means it doesn't feel right. Itty bitty. Itty bitty. Itty. Meh. So wrong is not wrong. It just means it's not the right direction. So you want to change directions. If you're not getting results, change directions. And I can help you with it. I'm very good at it, and I would love to help you. So just realize you haven't failed yet. Just because it hasn't pushed out, manifested, you haven't failed yet. Who are you to determine that you have failed? You don't. You are just this earthly self, and your higher self has a timeline in mind, and you don't know anything about it. So who are you to say that you failed? Look at Lincoln's timeline. He kept failing, and he didn't give up. There's this beautiful timeline. There's posters about it and everything. That he failed at this, succeeded. Failed at this, failed at this, succeeded. He just kept going. You have to keep going. If you want something, you keep going until it fucking works. Or until you decide you don't want to do it anymore. Either one is okay. But there's no failing. There's no failing in manifesting. Because time is an illusion in the sense that it's not like this. It doesn't just go like this. Time goes like this and up and down and back and forth because we constantly shift into different realities. I do believe in different multiple realities, parallel realities, right? Because I've seen it happen where 1 second I'm in this one and the next I get my manifestation, which means I shifted into the reality where the manifestation is already present. That's what it is, right? Makes the most sense to me. That's why I like parallel realities. But you are not the one to determine. You are just doing the work. And you're chipping away and you're relaxing more and more and you're letting things come in and you're shifting over and over. And all you're doing is concentrating on the what. And everything else will resolve itself with the work you're doing, right? But you haven't failed. You have not failed. If you think you failed, then take down those expectations a couple of notches and realize you have nothing to do with the timeline. That is not your job. That is the universe, the higher self, God, whatever. But you haven't failed. You are doing great. Even if you're going in the wrong direction, even if you're going in a direction that doesn't feel good, you had to figure that out to then go in the right direction every single time. Don't give up because you will get results. If you're going in the right direction, eventually you will get results because number one rule in manifesting is the outside world always will reflect what's on the inside. So if you have it on the inside, it will eventually push out on the outside. You just don't know when. And all you're doing is doing the work and determining. Again, if something is taking a really long time, it's because you're stuck on something. And we can work through this. But you haven't failed. There's no failure in manifesting unless you decide so. I hope that helped. Have a great day.